The Great Gatsby, Chapter 1. When I was younger, my father gave me advice that I still think about today. He said, if you ever feel like judging someone, remember that not everyone has had the same chances in life as you. He didn't explain more. But in our family, we often understand each other without many words. I knew he meant something important. Because of this, I try not to judge people quickly. This has helped me learn a lot about different kinds of people. Although it also means I have to listen to boring stories from time to time. Strange people notice this about me, and they often want to tell me their secrets. At university, people thought I was very political, just because I knew many private things about unusual men. I didn't ask them to tell me their stories. Often, I pretended to be asleep or busy when I saw that someone was about to tell me something personal. Young men usually talk in a way that sounds copied from others, or they hide parts of the truth. Still, I believe that not judging people gives us hope. I try to remember what my father said, even though it sounded a bit snobbish. That people are not all born with the same sense of what is right and proper. But even I have limits. People can live their lives in different ways. Some are strong like rock, others weak like wet ground, but after a while, I don't care. When I came back from the East last autumn, I wanted the world to be simple and clear. I didn't want any more wild adventures or deep emotional experiences. Only Gatsby was different. Gatsby, the man this book is about, was special. I usually dislike people like him, but Gatsby had something I admired. If a person's personality is just a series of actions, then Gatsby's actions were beautiful. He was very sensitive to life's possibilities, like a machine that can feel an earthquake far away. He wasn't one of those soft, moody people we call creative. He had something better. A special kind of hope, a romantic way of believing in dreams. I've never seen that in anyone else. In the end, Gatsby was okay. But the things that hurt him, the bad dust that followed his dreams, are what made me stop caring about other people's little problems and short-lived happiness. My family is well known and wealthy in a Middle Western city. The Caraways are like a small family group, and we say that we come from the Dukes of Buccleuch. But really, the first Caraway came here in 1851. He didn't fight in the Civil War. He paid someone else to go for him and started a hardware business. My father still runs it today. I never met this great uncle, but people say I look like him, especially the serious portrait in my father's office. I finished college at Yale in 1915, just 25 years after my father. Later, I joined the Army in what people now call the Great War, World War I. I actually enjoyed the war, and when I came back, I felt restless. The Middle West no longer felt like the center of the world. It felt far away from everything. So I decided to move east and learn about the bond business, a kind of financial job. Everyone I knew was doing it, so I thought I could do it too. My family talked about it like they were choosing a school for me. In the end, they said yes, but very seriously. My father agreed to pay for my first year. After some delays, I moved east in the spring of 1922. I thought it would be permanent. At first, I wanted to live in the city. But it was warm, and I had just left a place with big lawns and trees. A young man at work suggested we rent a house together in the countryside. I liked the idea. He found a small, old house for $80 a month. But just before we moved in, his company sent him to Washington. So I moved there alone. I had a dog for a few days, an old car, a Dodge, and a Finnish woman who made my bed and cooked breakfast. She also talked to herself in Finnish while cooking on the electric stove. It was a bit lonely at first. But one morning, a man stopped me on the road and asked, "How do you get to West Egg Village?" I told him, and after that, I didn't feel lonely anymore. I felt like I belonged, like I was someone important in the neighborhood. Just by asking me for directions, he made me feel at home. With the sun shining and leaves growing quickly on the trees, like in fast motion movies. I felt that life was starting again with the summer. There were so many things to read, and the fresh air made me feel healthy. I bought many books about banking and investments. They looked beautiful, red and gold, and promised to teach me rich men's secrets. I also wanted to read other kinds of books. I liked writing in college. I even wrote serious editorials for the Yale newspaper once. Now, I wanted to be that kind of person again, a well-rounded man. And that's not just a clever saying. Life really is better when you see it through one clear point of view. It was just chance that I rented a house in one of the strangest places in North America. It was on a long, thin island east of New York. On this island, there are two pieces of land that look like giant eggs. They're 20 miles from the city, and they stick out into the Long Island Sound, a large area of salt water. The two eggs look very similar in shape and size, but not in anything else. They are not perfect ovals. They are flat on one end, like in the story of Columbus and the egg. Birds flying above might think they look the same. But for people on the ground, the differences are very clear. I lived in West Egg, the less fancy of the two eggs. That's just a simple way to describe a much deeper and stranger difference between the two places. My house was at the very edge of West Egg, only about 50 yards from the water. It was small and old, and it sat between two huge, expensive houses that people rented for $12,000 or $50,000. The house next to mine, on the right, was huge, with a tall tower, new ivy growing on the walls, a marble swimming pool, and over 40 acres of land. This was Gatsby's mansion. I didn't know Gatsby yet, so I just thought of it as the house of a man named Gatsby. My own house didn't look good. It was small and kind of ugly, but it was cheap, and no one really noticed it. I had a nice view of the water. I could see a bit of my neighbor's garden, and I lived close to rich people. All of that for $80 a month. Across the bay, you could see the big, white houses of East Egg, where the rich and stylish people lived. The story of that summer really starts one evening when I drove to East Egg to have dinner with Tom and Daisy Buchanan. Daisy is my second cousin once removed, and I knew Tom from college. After the war, I visited them once for 2 days in Chicago. Tom was strong and had been a great football player at Yale. He was famous for it. He was one of those people who are excellent at something at a young age and then never find anything that feels as important afterward. His family was very rich. Even in college, people talked about how he spent money too freely. Now he had left Chicago and moved east in a way that seemed shocking. For example, he brought a group of polo ponies from Lake Forest. I couldn't believe someone my age could be that rich. I don't know why they moved east. They had lived in France for a year for no special reason, and then moved from place to place, going wherever rich people played polo. Daisy told me on the phone that this move was permanent, but I didn't really believe her. I didn't know her very well, but I felt that Tom was always looking for something exciting, like the feeling of a football game he could never get back. So, one warm and windy evening, I drove to East Egg to visit two old friends I didn't really know well anymore. Their house was even bigger than I expected. It was a red and white mansion built in a colonial style. It looked out over the bay. The lawn started at the beach and stretched all the way to the front door. It passed sundials, brick paths, and colorful gardens. Finally, it reached the house and climbed up the walls with bright green vines, like it couldn't stop growing. The front of the house had French windows glowing with golden sunlight. The windows were wide open to the warm air. Tom Buchanan stood on the porch in riding clothes, his legs apart. Tom had changed since college. Now he was 30, strong, with light-colored hair. His mouth looked hard, and he often looked proud and unfriendly. His eyes were bright and full of confidence. He always seemed to be leaning forward, like he wanted to challenge someone. Even though his clothes looked fancy, you could still see how powerful his body was. His boots were tight, and his muscles moved under his thin coat. He had the kind of body that could be used for force. It was a tough, maybe even cruel body. His voice was rough and low. It made him seem even more difficult and impatient. Even when he talked to people he liked, his voice had a tone like he looked down on them. Some people at college really disliked him. He seemed to say, "Don't think I'm right just because I'm stronger and more of a man than you." But that's exactly how he acted. We were in the same senior club at Yale. We weren't close, but I always felt he wanted me to like him. He had a strange way of wanting approval, even if it was rough. We stood and talked for a few minutes on the sunny porch. "I've got a nice place here," he said, his eyes moving quickly around. He took my arm and turned me so I could see everything. He pointed to a sunken Italian-style garden, a large rose garden, and a small motorboat moving in the water. "It used to belong to Domain, the oil man," he said. Then he turned me again, quickly but politely. "Let's go inside." We walked through a tall hallway into a bright room with soft pink colors. The room felt light and delicate, held together by French windows at both ends. The windows were open, and they looked white against the green grass outside, which almost seemed to grow into the room. A breeze came through, blowing the white curtains. They moved in and out like soft flags, rising up toward the fancy ceiling like frosting on a wedding cake. Then the wind moved over the dark red rug, making patterns of shadows like the wind on the sea. The only thing not moving in the room was a very large couch. Two young women were sitting on it, almost floating, like the couch was a balloon tied to the floor. Both women wore white dresses. Their clothes moved gently in the wind, as if they had just flown back into the room from outside. I stood there for a moment, listening to the sound of the curtains blowing and a picture on the wall creaking. Then there was a loud sound as Tom closed the windows. The wind stopped, and the curtains, the rug, and the two women slowly settled down. The younger woman was a stranger. She was lying still at her end of the couch. Her head was lifted slightly, like she was balancing something on her chin. Maybe she saw me from the corner of her eye, but she didn't show it. I almost felt like I should say sorry for disturbing her. The other woman was Daisy. She tried to sit up, leaning forward a little with a serious look. Then she laughed, a sweet, funny little laugh. And I laughed too, and came further into the room. "I'm so happy I can't move," she said with another laugh. She took my hand and smiled at me. It felt like she was saying I was the most important person in the world. That was just her way. She whispered that the other woman's name was Miss Baker. People said Daisy spoke softly to make others lean in closer to hear her. It may not be true, but it made her even more charming. Miss Baker moved her lips and gave a tiny nod. Then she quickly leaned her head back again, as if the invisible thing on her chin had almost fallen. I felt like I should say sorry again. I always feel surprised when someone acts so sure of themselves. I looked back at Daisy. She started asking me questions in a soft, beautiful voice. Her voice was like music, changing in a way that made you want to listen to every word. Her face looked a little sad, but still very beautiful. Her eyes were bright, and her mouth was full of energy. Her voice had a magic that men remembered. It made you feel she had just done something fun and exciting. And that more fun was just about to happen. I told her I had stopped in Chicago for a day and that many people there had sent her their love. Do they miss me? She asked, very happily. The whole city is sad without you, I joked. All the cars have one black wool to show they are in mourning. And people cry all night by the lake. That's wonderful. Let's go back, Tom. Tomorrow. Then she said, out of nowhere, you should see the baby. I'd like to. She's asleep. She's 3 now. Haven't you seen her before? No, never. Well, you must. Just then, Tom walked over and put his hand on my shoulder. What are you doing these days, Nick? I work in bonds, I said. Who with? I told him the name of the company. Never heard of them, he said firmly. That annoyed me. You will, I replied. You will if you stay in the East. Oh, I'll stay in the East. Don't worry, Tom said, looking at Daisy, then at me. I'd be a damn fool to live anywhere else. Then Miss Baker suddenly said, absolutely. Her voice surprised me. It was the first time she had spoken. She seemed surprised too. She yawned and stood up quickly and smoothly. I'm stiff, she said. I've been lying on that sofa forever. Don't blame me, Daisy said. I've been trying to get you to come to New York all afternoon. No, thanks, Miss Baker said, looking at the 4 cocktails someone had brought in. I'm in training. Tom looked shocked. You are? He drank his cocktail like it was nothing. I don't understand how you get anything done. I looked at Miss Baker, wondering what it was she did do. I liked looking at her. She was thin, with a small chest and perfect posture. She held her shoulders back like a young soldier. Her gray eyes, tired from the sun, looked at me with polite interest. Her face was pale, pretty, and seemed a little bored. I felt like I had seen her before, maybe a photo somewhere. You live in West Egg, she said, not kindly. I know someone there. I don't know many people there. You must know Gatsby. Gatsby, said Daisy. What Gatsby? Before I could answer, dinner was ready. Tom took my arm firmly. Like I was a game piece, he was moving across a board. The 2 women walked ahead of us out to a pink-colored porch. It was open to the sunset. For candles flickered on the table, blowing in the soft wind. Why are there candles? Daisy asked with a frown. She quickly blew them out. In 2 weeks, it will be the longest day of the year. She smiled at all of us. Do you always wait for the longest day and then miss it? I always wait for it, and then I miss it. We should make a plan. Miss Baker said with a yawn, sitting at the table like she was getting into bed. All right, said Daisy. What should we plan? She looked at me. What do people plan? Before I could answer, she suddenly looked at her finger. Look, she said. I heard it. We all looked. Her knuckle was black and blue. You did that, Tom, she said. I know you didn't mean to, but you did. That's what I get for marrying a big, strong, rough man, a great big hulking brute. I hate that word hulking, Tom said angrily. Even as a joke. Hulking, Daisy said again. Sometimes Daisy and Miss Baker talked at the same time. They spoke quietly, joking a little, but not in a silly way. Their voices were cool and calm, like their white dresses and their quiet eyes. They didn't really want anything. They were just there, being polite. They accepted Tom and me without much interest. They didn't try hard to be friendly, but they weren't rude either. They knew dinner would end soon, and later the evening would end too. It was very different from the West, where nights often feel busy or stressful. You make me feel like I don't belong, Daisy, I said after drinking a second glass of wine. Can't we talk about something simple, like farming? I didn't mean anything by it, but Tom suddenly got angry. The world is falling apart, he said loudly. I'm very negative about the future. Have you read The Rise of the Colored Empires by Goddard? No, I said, surprised by his serious tone. Well, it's a great book. Everyone should read it. It says that if we don't act now, the white race will disappear. It's all science. It's been proven. Tom is becoming very deep, Daisy said, pretending to be sad. He reads books with big, hard words. What was that word we liked? These books are scientific, Tom said again, looking annoyed. This guy explains everything. We are the top race, and we need to protect that. If we don't, other races will take control. We need to stop them, Daisy said with a silly wink at the hot sun. You should move to California, Miss Baker started, but Tom moved in his chair loudly, cutting her off. This is the point. We are Nordics. I am, you are, and you are. He paused and then nodded at Daisy. And we created everything that makes the world great. Science, art, everything. Do you get it? He looked like he really believed in what he was saying, even if it wasn't true. He looked a bit sad, like he needed to believe it now more than ever. Just then, the phone rang. The butler left the porch, and Daisy quickly turned to me. I'll tell you a family secret, she whispered with a smile. It's about the butler's nose. Want to hear it? That's why I came tonight, I joked. Well, he wasn't always a butler. He used to polish silver for a rich family in New York. They had silver for 200 people. He polished it every day, all day, until his nose started to hurt. Things got worse and worse, Miss Baker added. Yes, things got worse. In the end, he had to quit. For a moment, the last bit of sunlight touched her face. Her voice made me listen closely. But then the light faded, slowly leaving her face like children leaving a playground at night. The butler came back and whispered something to Tom. Tom frowned, pushed his chair back, and went inside without a word. As soon as he left, Daisy leaned toward me again. Her voice was soft and sweet. I love having you at my table, Nick. You remind me of a rose, a real rose. Don't you think so? She asked Miss Baker. A real rose? That wasn't true. I don't look like a rose. She was just making it up, but her words felt warm and special, like her heart was hidden in them. Then she suddenly threw her napkin on the table and went inside. Miss Baker and I looked at each other, saying nothing. I was about to speak when she sat up straight and said, "Shoo." We heard quiet, emotional voices from the other room. Miss Baker leaned forward, trying to hear better. The voices got louder, then quieter, then loud again, and then stopped. "This Mr. Gatsby you mentioned, he's my neighbor," I started to say. "Don't talk. I want to hear what's happening." "Is something happening?" I asked, confused. "You really don't know?" she said, surprised. "I thought everyone knew." "Knew what?" "Well," she said slowly, "Tom has a woman in New York." "He has a woman?" I asked, surprised. Miss Baker nodded. "She should have the respect not to call him during dinner. Don't you think?" Before I could answer, we heard a dress moving and shoes on the floor. Tom and Daisy came back to the table. I couldn't stop it, Daisy said, smiling too brightly. She sat down, looked at Miss Baker and then at me, and said, I looked outside. "It's so romantic. There's a bird singing. I think it's a nightingale that came on a ship." "Isn't that romantic, Tom?" "Very romantic," Tom said sadly. Then to me, "If there's still light after dinner, I want to show you the stables." The phone rang again inside. Daisy shook her head quickly at Tom, and all talk of stables or anything else stopped. I remember the candles being lit again for no reason. I wanted to look straight at everyone, but also wanted to avoid their eyes. I didn't know what Tom and Daisy were thinking. Even Miss Baker, who seemed calm and strong, probably couldn't ignore the woman on the phone. Someone with a certain kind of personality might find the moment interesting. But I just wanted to call the police. Of course, no one talked about the horses again. Tom and Miss Baker walked back into the library. With a quiet space between them, like they were watching over something serious. I followed Daisy outside, trying to look calm and friendly. We sat down together on a dark porch, side by side, on a wicker sofa. Daisy held her face in her hands, as if she was thinking about how pretty it was. Her eyes slowly looked out into the dark evening. I could see she was feeling a lot of emotions. So I tried to calm her by asking about her little daughter. We don't really know each other, Nick, she said suddenly. Even though we're cousins. You didn't come to my wedding. I was still in the war, I said. Oh, that's right. She paused. Well, I've had a hard time, Nick. And now I don't believe in many things anymore. She looked like she really meant it. I waited for her to say more, but she didn't. So I asked again about her daughter. She talks now, I guess. Eats and plays. Oh, yes, Daisy said, not really looking at me. Listen, Nick. Do you want to hear what I said when she was born? Yes, I do, I said. This will show you how I feel about the world. When she was born, she was just an hour old, and Tom wasn't there. I don't know where he was. I woke up from the medicine, feeling very lonely. And I asked the nurse if it was a boy or girl. She said it was a girl. I turned my head and cried. Then I said, I'm glad it's a girl. I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing for a girl to be in this world. A beautiful little fool. She went on, in a serious voice. You see, I think everything is terrible. Everyone does, even the smart people. And I know it's true. I've been everywhere, seen everything, done everything. Her eyes moved around the room strongly, like Tom sometimes did. And she laughed a little, with anger in her voice. I'm so sophisticated. God, I really am. But when she stopped talking, I felt like something wasn't true about what she said. It made me uncomfortable, as if the whole night was a show. And she just wanted me to feel sorry for her. After a moment, she looked at me with a little smile. Like she and Tom had a secret club that I wasn't part of. Inside the house, the red living room was full of light. Tom and Miss Baker were sitting on a long couch. She was reading to him from a magazine. Her soft, flat voice made the words sound like music. The light was bright on Tom's boots and soft on Jordan's yellow hair. When she turned a page, her arm moved gently. When Daisy and I came in, Jordan raised her hand to stop us from speaking. To be continued, she said, throwing the magazine onto the table. Then she stood up. It's 10 o'clock. Time for this good girl to go to bed. Jordan is playing in a golf tournament tomorrow, Daisy explained. At Westchester. Oh, you're Jordan Baker, I said. Now I knew why she looked familiar. I had seen her face in many sports photos. I had even heard a bad story about her once, but I couldn't remember it now. Good night, Jordan said softly. Wake me at 8, okay? If you get up, someone replied. I will. Good night, Mr. Carraway. See you soon. You will see him again, said Daisy. I think I'll try to get you two together. Come visit often, Nick. I'll lock you in closets or push you out to sea in a boat. Things like that. Good night, called Jordan from the stairs. I didn't hear a single word. She's a nice girl, Tom said after a moment. But she shouldn't travel around alone like this. Who says that? Daisy asked coldly. Her family. She has one aunt, and she's about 1,000 years old. Anyway, Nick will look after her. Right, Nick? She'll spend lots of weekends here this summer. The home atmosphere will be good for her. Daisy and Tom looked at each other silently. Is she from New York? I asked. She's from Louisville. We grew up there together. Two beautiful girls. Daisy stopped. Did you tell Nick all about life on the veranda? Tom asked suddenly. Did I? Daisy looked at me. I can't remember. Maybe we talked about the Nordic race. Yes, I think we did. The topic just appeared out of nowhere. Don't believe everything you hear, Nick, Tom said. I laughed and said I hadn't really heard anything. A few minutes later, I stood up to leave. Daisy and Tom came to the door and stood in the light, smiling. As I started the car, Daisy called out quickly, "Wait, I forgot to ask you something. It's important. We heard you're engaged to a girl out west." That's right, Tom said. We heard you're getting married. That's not true, I said. I'm too poor. But we heard it, Daisy said, smiling again like a flower opening. 3 different people told us. So it must be true. Of course I knew what they were talking about. But I was not engaged at all. One reason I came east was to get away from those rumors. I couldn't stop seeing old friends just because people talked. But I didn't want gossip to force me into a marriage either. Their interest made me feel a little closer to them, like they weren't just rich strangers. But I still felt confused and a bit annoyed as I drove home. I thought Daisy should run out of the house holding her child. But she didn't think that way. And Tom, well, the fact that he had a woman in New York didn't surprise me. What surprised me more was that a book had made him so upset. He seemed to be thinking about strange old ideas, as if just being strong and proud wasn't enough for him anymore. Outside, it was already deep summer. The gas stations had red pumps glowing in the night. When I got to my house in West Egg, I put the car away and sat for a while on an old grass roller in the yard. The wind had stopped. The night was full of sound, leaves moving like wings, frogs singing loudly. A cat walked across the grass in the moonlight. I turned my head to watch it, and then I saw someone. A man had come out of the shadows near my neighbor's house. He stood with his hands in his pockets, looking up at the stars. The way he stood so calmly made me think it was Mr. Gatsby himself. Maybe he was looking at the sky, thinking about what was his part in this world. I thought about calling to him. Miss Baker had mentioned him, so I could say hello. But then I stopped. He seemed like he wanted to be alone. He suddenly reached his arms out toward the dark water in a strange, emotional way. Even from far away, I thought he might be shaking. I turned my eyes toward the sea and saw nothing but a small green light far away. It might have been a light at the end of a dock. When I looked back, Gatsby was gone. I was alone again in the dark night.